Hi everybody, it's so nice to be back out here at Bray again, ready to share nature with all of you. We can't be here together, that's a little further away yet. But I'm here and I'm going to share what I'm seeing, and we're going to start our Fall Wonderbugs program. This fall we're going to be talking about trees and why trees are here, what they do for us, how we enjoy them, and we're going to learn how to learn more about them on our own. The first thing I'm going to do is to read you a book about trees. If you look around where I am, I'm sitting by a tree, and trees kind of tell us what's coming. We know fall is coming by looking at the trees. Sometimes a few leaves start to fall, then the leaves start to change, and we know that fall is here. We even know when fall is over because all the leaves are down and it's winter time. I'm going to read you the book A Tree is Nice by Janice May Udry, pictures by Mark Simon, and learn about how we enjoy trees. Trees are very nice. They fill up the sky. They go beside the rivers and down the valleys. They live up on the hills. Trees make the woods. They make everything beautiful. Even if you have just one tree, it is nice too. A tree is nice because it has leaves. The leaves whisper in the breeze all summer long. I like to walk through the forest sometimes and just listen to the leaves, the wind blowing through the leaves. In the fall, the leaves come down and we play in them. We walk in the leaves and we roll in the leaves. We build playhouses out of the leaves. Then we pile them up with our rakes and we have a bonfire. A tree is nice because it has a trunk and limbs. We can climb the tree and see over all the yards. We can sit on a limb and think about things, or play pirate ship up in the tree. If it is an apple tree, we can climb it to pick the apples. At my house, the squirrels also climb it to pick the apples. Cats get away from dogs by going up the tree. Birds build nests in trees and live there. Sticks come off the trees too. We draw on the sand with the sticks. A tree is nice to hang a swing in, or a basket of flowers. It is a good place to lean your hoe while you rest. A tree is nice because it makes shade. The cows lie down in the shade when it is hot. People have picnics there too, and the baby takes his nap in his buggy in the shade. A tree is nice for a house to be near. The tree shades the house and keeps it cool. The tree holds off the wind and keeps the wind from blowing the roof off the house sometimes. A tree is nice to plant. You dig the biggest hole you can and put the little tree in. Then you pour in lots of water and then the dirt. You hang the shovel back in the garage. Every day for years and years you watch that little tree grow. You say to people, "I planted that tree." They wish they had one, so they go home and they plant a tree too. All of you have memories of what you have done, climbing trees or walking among trees or walking in the forest and just looking at the trees. There's a way to help you remember what you've seen, and that's what our activity today is going to be. I have a book here called Trees, Leaves, and Bark. It is a book that you can take along when you're adventuring in the woods, and it literally has all kinds of trees in here that will help you identify the tree as you're walking. It shows a picture of the kind of leaves that are on the tree. It shows a picture of the bark. If it has cones, it shows the cones. It's a really helpful book, and in the back it even has some activities for you to do. It's called Trees, Leaves, and Bark, and it's written by Diane L. Burns, and you can find it on Amazon. I looked again this morning because I've had this book for quite some time. What we're going to do is make a bark book, a leaf and bark book, and we're going to walk out into the forest, and I will show you how to make a bark rubbing, and then show you how to mount it into a book that you can collect all your bark rubbings and your leaves in. So we'll see you in a minute. So we're here at a great big old sycamore tree, and we're going to make a bark rubbing. What I've done is taken a piece of newsprint. You can use regular drawing paper. I've used tracing paper before. It depends on where I am and what I have. So for today, though, I've got a piece of newsprint because it works really well. So what I've done is I've tacked it to the tree bark. It's not going to hurt the bark or the tree because it really doesn't go in that far. So don't worry about it. Just tack your piece of paper up to the bark. And then take a crayon, make sure that there's not any paper left on the crayon, and go ahead and rub the bark. Now, the fun thing is that when I rub this, I'm going to start seeing the pattern of the bark. But maybe I want to remember more about the bark. And if you look, while I'm coloring this, and while I'm rubbing over the bark, look at the rest of the tree and see what you can see, if you notice anything on the tree. Okay, I've got quite a bit of rubbing on here now. Some trees will have clearer patterns, and some will just have sort of lines that you start to see form. And if you look carefully, you'll see that on the sycamore tree, there are lines that are starting to form for how the grain of the bark goes. Maybe you noticed, maybe you didn't. But if you look, there's green on the tree. That's moss that's growing on the tree. And I want to remember that. I want to remember that, yes, the bark was on the tree, but there was also moss growing on the tree, and there was lichen growing on the tree. So I also brought with me a green crayon. You can use any colors you want, but if I go ahead and go over this a little bit, I don't only make a prettier picture because it's more colorful, but it'll help me remember that there was moss on the sycamore tree on which I rubbed the bark. So there we have a rubbing of the bark of a sycamore tree. We're going to go back to the table again, and I'm going to show you how to mount it and how to put it into a book so that you have your own tree rubbing book. Okay? See you in a bit. So we're back at our table again, and this is my book of bark rubbings. I put a picture on the front of trees, and I do a lot of hiking, so I put some hiking boots down here too, because that's where I find most of my trees. If I open up my book, I have my tree rubbings in here. This is a dogwood tree, and what I did was I put the name of the tree at the bottom. I also put down where I found it. This particular dogwood tree is in my backyard. So I put down my house. Here's one of those examples I mentioned to you where you can put two colors on. The reason I used these two colors was because where the bark was a little bit bare, it was kind of a reddish orange. So I thought if I showed that, I would remember that. It's a bald cypress, and that too is by my house. If you remember from last month when I sent out the ideas of things you can do if you go out into the forest by yourself or out to look at different things and find different things and be able to read nature, remember when we said that trees get rougher bark as they get older? In the front of our house we have a red maple, and the red maple is a fairly young tree. So what I did was put the paper, in this case it was newsprint, over the tree, and to show you what I mean by how the bark changes, this is the really young bark, this is the bark as the tree is getting older. You can show that I didn't have to move the paper. This was just one place that I set this piece of paper. When I was at my son's house, he lives in St. Charles, and he has a pecan tree. I didn't have my newsprint with me, but he had some computer paper. So I just took a piece of that. You can use that. Like I said, there's all kinds of paper you can use. And I added it to my book. It's not a matter of keeping all the same paper. It's a matter of getting the bark rubbing and the leaf so you can remember it. And then I also tried to use on this one, which is down the street from me a little ways, I used some tracing paper. The only thing about tracing paper is if you use the tracing paper and then you have another tree rubbing, you're going to be able to see through. If you don't want that, then you might want to back your tracing paper with white paper or just not use tracing paper. In order to get a page ready for your book, here's what you do. You take your tree rubbing, like ours. This happens to be a sycamore tree. We said that when we were over there. You take your marker and write sycamore on the bottom or wherever you want. And then put down where you found it. Now my sycamore tree that I rubbed is at Bray, so that's what I put down. So far, this is what our tree rubbing looks like. But I also, as you saw in my book, I also have leaves. So we picked up some leaves as we were walking back to the table. And I have several sizes here. And it's up to you. If you want more of your bark rubbing to show, then choose a smaller leaf that you're going to put wherever you want it on your page. If you want a bigger leaf, choose a bigger leaf. And it will take up more and be more the center of your picture. If you like the leaf and want it to show up more, then do that. I generally take the leaves and I take them home and I press them. It makes them flatter. It makes it easier to put them in the wax paper. You don't have to, but you can. But let's say I was going to use this bigger leaf. Then when it's all nice and dry, because this one's still kind of wet, so you wouldn't want to do it when it's wet. You'd want it to dry. And if you pressed it, I would say press it for maybe a day. You can put your, you can save your piece of paper here and then put this and label it so you don't forget what the tree is. And then take your leaf after it's dry and it's pressed out a little bit. Take a piece of wax paper, like so, and lay your leaf on the wax paper and then cover it. Hold the wax paper, however it works, cover it, and then have Mom or Dad iron it. I put the iron at about, I think I put it on cotton, just so that you get the, you're not going to get it to stick to the leaf. You don't really want it to stick to the leaf. You're going to get the wax paper to stick to itself. And that way you have preserved your leaf. So once you get that done, cut it so that, like if we look at mine in here, cut it so that it has a nice shape, and staple it anywhere you want on your page so that it ends up looking something like this. One of the other things we saw as we were coming back was a piece of bark that had fallen off the sycamore tree, which is really interesting. Again, this is your book. You can put whatever you'd like to have on your page. So let's say that you think, wow, that bark is really cool. It was laying on the ground. I didn't take it off the tree, but I would sure like to remember that too. So you can attach that to your page also. And I think that's what I'll do when I get home. And after I press my leaf, and after I trim the paper, and after I put it on my paper, I will also add my piece of bark, because I want to remember that that bark came from that tree. So that's kind of what you're going to have when you're done. It's going to look like these. And anytime you want, then you can go back and look at the trees you had. And if you change the color like we did, kind of remember why you changed the color. And that's our activity for today. We're going to have a link up for you to go to see this activity on the internet. And we're also going to send a couple of extra activities out. Look for them in the next couple days. Have a great fall, and we'll see you again in October with another tree lesson. Glad to be back.